Hello and welcome to episode 10 of OPERAVISION's Next Generation series. I'm Nina Brazier, a stage director based in Frankfurt, and over this series we're diving into 4 European young artist programmes, exploring how the opera world is developing and nurturing the next generation of talent. From Opera for Peace to the Accademia Rossiniana at the Rossini Opera Festival, to the Palau de les Arts in Valencia and the Opera Studio at Oper Frankfurt. We have backstage access to masterclasses, concerts, rehearsal spaces and dressing rooms to find out how the singers negotiate the physical and emotional highs and lows while exploring their unique operatic voice. Today we're with Opera for Peace at their week-long academy in Paris, where they're having coaching, sessions on artistic identity and expert masterclasses from Eileen Perez, Sumi Jo, Thomas Hampson, Etienne Dupuis and Brian Jade, culminating in a glorious closing concert at the Eiffel Tower. Brian is an ambassador for Opera for Peace, and straight after his masterclass and the day after a session on branding and social media with expert Jenna Wolfe, we took some time out for an open-hearted interview where he shared his thoughts on shortcuts that singers lean on instead of improving their technique, must-dos to get rehired for that crucial second contract, and Brian also opened up about his own struggles with depression and how therapy helped him move on, both personally and professionally. Let's go straight to my conversation with Brian. What a joy to listen to you in your masterclass today. And you said there, we crack, we make mistakes, we're human. And I would love to hear about a time when perhaps you made a mistake up there in front of an audience. How did you get through a moment like that?
Oh, yeah, it happens. There's also miscommunications that happen. So any number of reasons you can do something technically wrong. I remember one time I was singing Aida in San Francisco Opera, and I had done 8 performances, and on the 9th one, we changed conductors. And so we hadn't had time to work together, and I was singing Cellist Aida in the very beginning of the opera, and it's stressful already because you have no time to warm into it. You have to be really ready to go when you walk on stage. And I went up for the last high note, and I held it, and then we didn't know who was cutting off who. And so at the very end of the note, I kind of cracked. And I let go of it, and it was sort of obvious to the audience. Whatever. But you have to keep going. There's nothing to do about that. It's happened. It's over. Are you going to dwell on it for the next 25 minutes of scene? Or are you going to move on, fix it, and show the audience what you can do right? So you really have one choice, in my opinion. You can sit up there and be miserable about it, or walk off the stage like the old singers used to do if they were not having a good night or something. But we don't have that anymore. Now you just keep pushing through. You keep making it happen. Push is the wrong word. You keep trying to make this body do what you want it to do.
And has that always been the way that you've been able to just let it go in that moment and move on? Or is that something you've had to learn to do in your time and in your experience on stage?
So I was talking actually to some of the young artists just now because they were saying, how do you get over nerves or whatever? And I said, nerves are going to always exist. I've been under a lot of pressure in my life in different ways. I grew up in a certain way. I've had a certain experience in my life where things weren't always great. So I had to work from a young age too. So I have a work ethic. I have a drive. I have something that's in me that I think makes me continue no matter what kind of thing. However, nerves exist, and there's nothing you can do except for try and channel them into more of an exciting position. Try to make them useful to you, because otherwise they're no use. So my idea is that same energy, that anxiety that we have is very similar to excited energy. It's very similar. And so I always say to myself, I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited to be here. And these mantras are changing my mentality about the nerves. And I tend to think that nerves decrease over time when your technique is better. So the more you can technically do, the more free you are vocally, the less worried you are about it. When Michael Jordan went to shoot a basketball, he didn't think, I'm going to miss this right now and then hit it. No, he always knew he was going to hit it. Yeah. And I have to know that I'm always going to be able to do it. I'm not always perfect, but I'm going to be able to do it.
Yeah, and like you say, we're human and we can't get away from the fact.
Yeah, we're not robots. It's not even going to be the same every time.
Exactly.
That's part of the beauty of it, in fact. It's real. It's in the moment. Honestly, hearing a singer mess up sometimes is one of the most amazing experiences for a performance. It's the fact that it's live. It's no pre-recorded. We're not singing to a track like 90% of pop singers today.
And you mentioned there your work ethic. And yesterday in the session with Jenna, you were talking a bit about, you set up your own website when you're at university. Where did that brilliant hustle come from in the first place? Did that come from your parents? And do you still have that feeling of hustle at your stage of your career, even now?
You have no choice. I mean, you may be able to afford to pay some people to help you with that as you get advanced in your career. Hopefully you can. But I grew up in a very modest means family. When I was 7, I was doing odd jobs around my neighborhood. I was shoveling driveways. I was raking leaves. So I've been working since I'm a child. And when I was 12, my parents didn't have enough money for new clothes for me, for instance. So they said, listen, you want new clothes? If you keep growing, which of course I did, then you need to get a job. So I was working already. So even in high school and middle school, I already had a job, and I already had the idea that nothing came for free without the work that you have to put in to do that. So I think that struggle is what helps you through the career, because most opera singers don't start a career until their 30s. So you're poor for your 20s. You get out of college with $100,000 in debt or whatever. Even I was working 5 jobs in college and I still had debt. This is not an easy thing for anybody. So in fact, you really have to have that go-getter mentality. Making websites was just me saying, you know what, I'm going to make myself look more advanced and maybe even hireable. If someone wants to look up my name for some reason, if I sing for them, they want to say, what has this person done? At least they could find something and find some little reviews, even from college performances.
Now, another thing you said in your session just now that really stood out to me, you said, it's not my voice isn't working, but it's that I'm not telling my body what to do. And I love this because it puts you in a position of control rather than being the victim.
It's not passive.
Exactly, right? And did this positive attitude, does that come naturally to you? Or was that something you kind of had to train yourself in?
Yeah, I mean, my teacher says that. I remember being upset about it at first because you're like, my voice isn't working today. And you're putting it on the voice, like it has its own power, like it does it on its own, and I have no control over it. And it's something we all do with lots of things in our lives. We always try to find some reason that has nothing to do with ourselves in the first place. Now, sometimes it's possible that things happen to you, but this is your voice. The instrument is in your body. You can't see it. It's really hard to work with, but you have to train it. And that's why I always say the voice isn't just here. It's your whole body. It's everything. You have to train all of it.
Yeah, no, I really, really like that. Now, there are a couple of style elements you were talking about now with our emerging singers that I really, really liked. And I wonder, just for our listeners who aren't necessarily singers, you picked up the singers on these 3 things. When they used a hook, you called it. When they were shifting gears, I was thinking the beginning of the Tosca aria. Sure. And when they sound square. I wonder if you could describe for us what exactly these things are again, and how singers can perhaps avoid doing these little kind of tricks that some people use in a style way that actually is perhaps, like you said, in sometimes tacky.
It's more of a reason that was more they had to, because they were using their voices the wrong way. Basically, it comes down to technique. You have to have a good one, and it has to be supporting the instrument so that it can be free to produce sound, not forced to produce sound. This takes time. It takes a lot of mental energy to understand, because again, we're talking about an instrument in you. You can't see it. You can't physically manipulate it with your hands as much as you would like to. I mean, I can sort of be on the outside and I can say, okay, so keep my larynx down, keep the space open, hold my support here. And I do that. Those things do help when learning the technique. But if you get through those things, you shouldn't have to hook. You shouldn't have to go, hi, to do a sound, because you're not here. It's all in the body. So if you're pressing, if you're holding in your throat, if you're singing straight, like square, phrasing is linear. So if you think about it up and down, you're really going to get stuck. And the motion has to be constant motion.
Yeah. So the hook was the thing you just did for us right at the beginning there. And what was the gear change? Tell us about that.
A hook is a gear change. Right. In fact, they're virtually the same thing, but you're holding. And so when you hold, then you have to change something drastically to change. And in this situation with the gear changing, I think I was talking about vowel positions and trying to go a, e, a, o, u. And we can't sing like that. In fact, that's not how we actually produce sound. In general, the position is very neutral, in my opinion. It stays open, and then the vowels are created through that space. So you're not like forcing a squeezed thing to create a sound.
Here's part of Brian's masterclass where he's helping the Mexican tenor Raúl Gutiérrez with that gear change issue.
Norte diverse bellezze insiem confonde, ma nel riterrare costei il mio solo pensiero, il mio solo pensiero sei tu.
With this aria, it's also directly in a passaggio from the second note, and it's very easy to carry weight from the one to the next. But you are not thinking that you're already in the phrasing before you start. So it's almost like, it's a very common mistake. In fact, I used to make it myself because I've sung this role a million times. And if you go, re, re, com, it's almost like you're shifting gears. So the phrase is recondita, not recondit. You're going to die that way, right? And when I think of this piece, I don't think of it in 6. I think of it in 2. Recondita armonia di bellezze diverse. So it's like a big rubato. And then you're making music. And this is the beginning of the opera. He's happy here. It's the one time before everything goes to hell in the opera. So this is your chance to show how happy and how in love you are with this woman, right? So let's start it that way, and then we'll get to the voice, okay? That all that was much better when it comes to phrasing, and it seemed like in the first 2 lines it was much freer, right? So that's your goal, right? Now, a couple of things I noticed, okay? A, don't come off the voice to sing piano. Don't do this. It's not singing. Nobody in a real opera house will hear you do that. Right? So no matter what, it has to be supported singing. Every phrase to the end of the phrase, to the end of the note. So can we go from la e bruna floria, and then also one other thing before you go, you have to make choices here, okay? Right now I feel like the portamenti are all over the place. And I don't feel like you've made concrete choices about when you're going to make a port. When I've done this, I've had a coach tell me where they want me to do l'ardente amante mi or mante mi. I've had it both ways, right? It doesn't matter, but you need to make choices, and you can't do both.
L'arte nel suo mistero, le diverse bellezze insiem confonde, ma nel ritrarre costei il mio solo pensiero, il mio solo pensiero sei tu.
Never again. Never again. Never, ever, ever, ever. Get that?
Oh, no,
Sing. Did you need anything? You didn't need anything. You didn't need the It's so tacky when people do that, right? But it's almost always because they're singing incorrectly that it happens. It's because you're using this to support. The only reason anybody ever needs a hook to support is because they're singing, supporting with their throat.
And there we had the hook. The thing he asked him to get to help him was a tissue. Head over to the masterclass on operavision.eu to see what that's about. Now, starting out singing in the wrong voice type is a common experience for many singers and something Brian has experienced firsthand. Now, in your session yesterday with Jenna, you talked a bit about singing for several years as a baritone.
I did.
And as Jenna described, she said you lost 8 years of singing as a tenor in that time. I'm just thinking about other singers who might be going through a similar experience.
There are millions of them.
Yeah, misdiagnosed, as we said yesterday. How difficult would you say it is to switch? And is it never too late?
Yeah, I think the thing is 90% of the time when you're switching Fox, it's because you were never in the right Fox to begin with. So I wasn't really a baritone. I was singing baritone rep, but probably still a tenor with a bad technique. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So while I tried to be a baritone, and because my teacher said I'm probably a high lyric baritone, which was incorrect, there is some warmth and darkness in my tenor voice, so it is possible that people could misdiagnose that. But also, some people just don't know how to teach. And a lot of people, actually, I would say, are out there who are teaching without teaching bodily support. They're not teaching open throats. They're not making sure people's tongues aren't going back. I mean, these are basics. And I spent 8 years not knowing this, you know? So when she says I lost 8 years of career, I probably didn't. I lost 3, you know, because I would have been in college and still learning how to sing all that time. But yeah, maybe if I had been able to stay a tenor, I might have been able to sing some repertoire that I really wish I could have sung, like Lucia or Nemorino, you know, things like that, like lighter roles than I got to sing when I started.
And do you have a sense of resentment over that time that you missed out on?
I tend to believe that everything happens for a reason. I'm not religious by many means, but I'm spiritual in the way that I think that life is gonna go the way life is gonna go. You can direct it in certain ways, but you know, things sometimes happen the way they're supposed to happen. Maybe I wasn't mature enough at the time. Who knows? I definitely wasn't mature enough. I mean, most men aren't, but the point is, like, you know, everything comes to you when you're ready to accept it, and there are things I do wrong that I have to fix, and maybe they're not coming as quickly as I want, but they will.
Yeah,
They will.
yeah, absolutely.
It's just a process.
Now, I really love that you said yesterday, no is my favourite word. And that is another way singers can have more control over their careers. And I'm thinking about young singers who perhaps are on more classic young artist programmes. What about them when the pressure perhaps comes from outside the house, the intendant? Sure. What can they do about saying no at the time when they really need to say no?
Especially when they really want the opportunity. It's really hard to talk to an intendant whose agenda is not to preserve your instrument. Their agenda is to put what they need on stage for as low cost as possible. I mean, that's just the honest truth of it. So you need to be your own CEO. You need to be the one who knows the trajectory of your career. And yes, you have support staff for that. You have your teacher, you have your agencies. If you have an agent, if you're a young artist, maybe you don't. So you really have to have some part of you that says, I'm not ready for that yet. If someone's offering you a role that you didn't even think of yet, you're probably not ready to do it, even if it's a year from now. But if you have a teacher who knows what they're talking about, who's teaching you well, who knows your voice, maybe there's also a place that you're doing it that's safe. Nowadays, it's hard to find a safe place because everything's caught on video by somebody. And, you know, I know somebody who just tried out Aida for the first time. It was supposed to be in a place, but it got broadcast, right? I mean, it's not really fair, you know what I mean? Pavarotti got to go do things and make mistakes or do things wrong here and there. I mean, I'm sure he made very little mistakes, but the point is, he made them and he could fix them. But now everybody knows instantly, and they don't forgive you really easily.
Yeah.
It's a very quick thinking world. So you need to be the person who tells yourself, I'm not ready for that. If you're going to talk to somebody about it, you have to say, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Let me talk to my teacher before, because this seems a little bit advanced for me, or maybe it seems like something I hadn't thought of singing yet. Let me go through some of the music, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Because that also gives you the time to say no. Let me be responsible singer so that I don't put a bad show on for your audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You're helping them by saying no. to help him have a better artistry in his house or her house.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. I haven't heard that before, so that's super, super useful. And I'm thinking, you said yesterday, that also really resonated with me, you cannot do this job without looking after your emotional and mental health. And also, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a therapist. I'm wondering if you're prepared to tell us.
Sure.
I'd love to hear what that therapy helped you through or how that helped you support you in your career.
Of course. No, I mean, we all carry baggage from when we're born till we try and let go of the baggage. My childhood was tough. So, I mean, everybody has their different variations on that. And there were some things that were helpful to me as a person, and there were some things that were hindering me as a person. And I didn't realize how much some of those things were hindering me. And I went through most of my 20s like this. And it wasn't helping my relationships. I mean, with anybody, not even just boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever situation. I mean, it wasn't making me successful in life. It wasn't helping my friendships. It was making them worse. I was pushing away people, even though I thought I was holding on to them. So all these things that we all go through this. This is so normal. And the idea that therapy would be the thing to fix me was also something scary to me. Or also, I didn't want to think anything was wrong with me. You know, therapy has such a terrible, connotation next to it. That's like, oh, that's not a real illness. That's something that's wrong with you. But in reality, everybody has stuff that they have to go through and figure out about themselves and their lives. So it freed me up. I was going through what I would call a depression, I think, when I started going to see a therapist. I mean, my therapist was like, oh, you're depressed. We'll fix it. Whatever, don't worry. I mean, he made me feel in that moment, instantly, like it was normal. And I was able to start talking through the things that made me who I was to that point and resolve them in a way that was healthy, in a way that helped me let go of those things. So that way, when I'm on stage, I can look back to certain ideas. Like, for instance, I was really insecure in my 20s. God, I don't know any men who are insecure in their 20s or even their 30s. And Don José is a perfect example of a very insecure man. He's so insecure that he holds on to a woman who he knows is going to push back. But he does it anyway because he doesn't want to let go. He doesn't think he deserves her. And I can go back into my own world and say, I remember not thinking I deserved those girlfriends, so I held on even tighter. And then they walked away from me because of that. It's a very common behavior, actually, because you think you're being really loving and actually you're holding on too tight.
Yeah.
You know that song, Hold On Loosely? Yeah, that's all about that.
Yeah, totally. I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that answer so openly with us. I really, really appreciate that. From supporting emotional and mental health to supporting voices, back in the masterclass, Brian's working with the young Croatian-Austrian tenor Matteo Ivan Rašić.
So this is your first time singing this?
Yeah.
This is a challenge.
It is.
It's a big challenge, but your voice is actually humongous. I don't know if you realize that.
Thank you.
This is perfect rep for you, and this is rep you will do in the future.
Yeah.
I felt like the idea of how you sing in the passaggio is unclear. Because currently, it's very wide open on F and F sharp. But the problem is it messes up your Gs every time. Because what you end up having to do is end up closing down on them. And then the rest of the top ends up being pushed through the chords, right? You can even hear the air escaping, right? It's not uncommon. It's something we all have to figure out. Okay, but let's start it from the beginning, and I'll point out some moments where I think you can help. Are you supporting from your body when you sing?
I try to.
Yeah, because right now I feel like it's still in the throat quite a bit.
Yeah.
And and you're getting away with it because you are how old?
23.
You're 23 years old. So this is wonderful that you're already this advanced. You're 23 years old. You have a long career ahead of you, right? You're in a very advanced position, but if you don't fix this now, 5 years, and then it's over.
Tombe degli miei, l'ultimo avanzo d'una stirpe infelice, della cogliete voi.
Okay, so right now, all the vowels are kind of gear shifting still.
Okay.
Because you're using your throat more to do it
Yeah.
than your support to sing the sound, right? Use the Italian and the phrasing also to free up
Okay.
your idea.
Yeah. D'una stirpe felice.
Right?
Yeah. D'una stirpe felice. D'una stirpe felice.
I mean, I'm exaggerating, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that there's
Okay.
freedom because you're on the body, not in the throat.
Yeah.
And there's that gear shifting again that Brian mentioned earlier. Take a look at the masterclass over on operavision.eu if you want to hear how Matteo developed. But apart from getting the technique right, what are the more personal traits that young singers should consider?
You talked about it's not getting hired that's the mark of success, it's about getting rehired. I'm thinking for young singers starting out, or emerging singers, as we say here with Opera for Peace, what should they think about in those early contracts that they're really making the right impression? Things that are sort of practical.
So simple. I mean, be prepared, be on time. Know not just every note and how to phrase and as much as you can know that way, but also understand the character and have ideas and then be open to other ideas too, because, you know, nobody wants to deal with somebody who's a pain all the time. In fact, nowadays, they'd rather just find someone else. Honestly, there's no such thing as a diva, divo, this whole negative connotation to that. You can be a diva and a divo, but a nice one. Be respectful, treat the music well, treat your artists and colleagues well around you, treat the staff well. Appreciate every person who helps you get on that stage. I mean, when I was in college, I built my own sets. I painted my own sets. I sewed my own costumes. I learned how to put on makeup. I hung my own lights. I programmed lights. I directed. I stage managed. So I was lucky in a way in that part of college, and maybe not the vocal technique part, but the fact that I got to see all the different aspects of what makes an opera happen. And how can you not appreciate all the work that goes into that and all the staff backstage who are busy doing all kinds of stuff while you're up in front of 4,000 people trying to sing. It's support, and you have to appreciate every single one of them. And the more you can show that in an honest, real way, the more people will want you always, all the time. There's nothing better than working with fun, good, excited to be there people. The worst thing is the opposite.
Finally, I'm going to bring us on to the question I ask all my guests. What do you think we can do to make the opera world a better place?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I think we can do. Obviously, we're really focused right now on diversity, just like the rest of the world is. Obviously, we want to have a full spectrum of what the world looks like in every opera house and give opportunities to anybody we can. Theaters in the last 20 years seem to have gotten away from promoting singers. And I felt like that was the success of the past. I mean, why did people go to the opera? They didn't go to see a certain production. Maybe the Met's Turandot, but it was always because also the singers were people who you wanted to go sing. But lately, it feels like for the last 10 years, houses are kind of more willing to dispense of singers and just turn them over. Partially, I think that's because financially this business is really a dark place. I mean, the cost of living has gone up 3 to 4 times in any major city, and the fees for opera, even at the top level, are the same as they were 30 years ago. So it's not the same world. You can't, as a singer, for instance, I can't cancel as often as guys and girls back in the day could have. If they had if they had a little tickle, they could be like, oh, sorry, not tonight. That's not allowed really today. I can't afford to. I have to work, and I only get paid when I sing. So my goal is to have high quality all the time in that situation. Sometimes you're sick. Sometimes you have to put it up. So I think houses could do a little more supporting of singers and go back to what worked with drawing in the public. I mean, you want more ticket sales, then you need to have a reason for them to come. it's not just because they're already opera fans. So promoting these singers, making them stars, houses used to do that. Houses and record labels used to do this. Now, record labels don't make stars really anymore. It's kind of making a record never really made money in classical music anyway. And it was about helping support a beautiful career. But those careers started because houses were like, check this out. We have Diana Demrau, we have Luciano Pavarotti, we have Renee Fleming, or even more modern, people from the last 10 years. It's decreasing little by little. And I feel like it's because houses have made a decision to say, we can't afford to do this way. And there are more singers in the trough, and we can burn them up too. It doesn't help the field. We need more great singers, more people out there doing the job.
Thank you so much to Brian Jade, Matteo Ivan Rašić and Raúl Gutiérrez for joining me today on OPERAVISION, and we'll be hearing more from those two emerging tenors in future episodes. There's plenty more online at operavision.eu, where you can see the Opera for Peace Masterclasses in Paris with Brian Jade and Eileen Perez from the 2nd of June, Cendrillon by Viardot in the performance from the Palau de les Arts, and the Opera Studio Soirée with young artists from Oper Frankfurt. I'll link to those in the show notes and give details on the other music extracts you heard in this episode. We'll be back with Oper Frankfurt on Saturday the 1st of July. This series is edited and produced by Karen Pirri and curated and hosted by me, Nina Brazier. OPERAVISION is co-funded by the European Commission.